My name is Stephen Miller, and at 32 years old, I became the family disappointment. For years, I was the reliable son, the designated family chef, who never actually chose that role. When Dad handed me that list of 29 guests for Thanksgiving, saying, "Start cooking at 6 a.m. and make sure everything is perfect this time," something inside me finally snapped. So while my family expected me to be slaving away in the kitchen at dawn, I was actually boarding a plane 3,000 miles away. Before I tell you what happened next, where are you watching from? Hit that like button if you have ever fantasized about escaping overwhelming family expectations during the holidays. Growing up as the oldest of 3 kids in the Miller household shaped me in ways I never fully understood until recently. From an early age, I became the default caretaker for my younger siblings, Amanda and Jason. Our parents, Richard and Karen Miller, were successful professionals. Dad, a corporate attorney, and Mom, a hospital administrator, who prioritized their careers above pretty much everything else. I was 12 when I made my first family dinner. Mom called to say she would be working late again, and Dad was out of town for the 3rd time that month. Amanda was 9, crying over homework she did not understand, and Jason was 7, hungry and cranky. With no other options, I pulled a chair to the stove and figured out how to make boxed macaroni and cheese. It was far from gourmet, but seeing their faces light up gave me this strange sense of responsibility and pride. What started as occasional necessity quickly became expectation. By 13, I was cooking dinner 4 nights a week. By 14, I was handling grocery shopping with Mom's credit card. By 15, I was planning meals around everyone's schedules. No one ever asked if this was what I wanted. It just became my role. The real turning point came during my sophomore year of high school. Thanksgiving was approaching, and both my parents casually mentioned at breakfast that they had invited my grandparents and my aunt's family. "You will need to make a turkey," Mom said, not looking up from her phone. I have never cooked a turkey before, I pointed out. Dad shrugged. "You can look it up online. Your food always turns out fine." That first Thanksgiving was a disaster, and a triumph rolled into one. I spent hours watching YouTube tutorials, made 3 separate shopping trips because no one told me everything I would need, and stayed up until 2 in the morning prepping. The turkey was undercooked in some parts, overcooked in others. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The gravy had weird chunks in it. But everyone ate. My grandfather, a man of few words, patted my shoulder and said, "Good job, boy." My cousins asked for seconds of my pumpkin pie. And just like that, a new family tradition was born: Stefan Cooks Thanksgiving. Throughout high school, my identity became wrapped up in feeding people. While other kids played sports or joined clubs, I experimented with recipes. My siblings' friends started hanging out at our house, more drawn by the homemade cookies and comfort food I prepared. Even my parents began bragging about their chef son to colleagues and friends. I thought going to college would free me from this role. I chose a school 4 hours away and pursued architecture, a field that had always fascinated me. For the first semester, I felt liberated. I joined the rowing team. I made friends who knew me as Stefan, the architecture student, not Stefan, the family cook. I even dated a bit. Then came winter break. I arrived home to find a dinner party in progress, 12 of my parents' work colleagues enjoying a catered meal. As soon as I walked in the door, my mother announced, "Our chef son is home. Stefan, would you mind making your famous tiramisu for everyone?" I did mind. I had been traveling all day. I was tired, but the expectation hung in the air, and all those strangers were looking at me with anticipation. So I made the tiramisu, and everyone raved about it, and my mother beamed with pride as if she had created both the dessert and the son who made it. That pattern continued throughout my college years. Every break, every visit home included some variation of "Stefan, would you mind making?" And I always complied, swallowing my resentment, along with my cold portions of whatever I had prepared. After graduation, I had plans to move to Chicago for a job at a prestigious architecture firm. 2 weeks before my start date, Mom called in tears. Dad had thrown his back out. Amanda was studying abroad. Jason was busy with his internship. They needed me to come home just for a few weeks to help out. Those few weeks stretched into months. Dad recovered, but suddenly there were always reasons why I needed to stay. Grandma was ill. The house needed repairs I could help with. Jason was going through a rough patch and needed his big brother. My Chicago opportunity evaporated. I took a lower-paying job at a local firm and moved into the apartment above my parents' garage that had once been Dad's home office. 5 years slipped by this way. Amanda moved to Seattle after college, married her boyfriend Trevor, and rarely came home except for major holidays. Jason finished his business degree and took a job in Atlanta. Meanwhile, I remained in my hometown still cooking. Sunday dinners still being volunteered to cater family functions still hearing. Stefan would not mind doing that. The Thanksgiving traditions grew more elaborate each year. 3 years ago, we hosted 20 people. I spent 3 days cooking. My aunt brought a store-bought pie, and everyone praised her contribution while taking my 20 dishes for granted. 2 years ago, it was 24 guests. I took 2 days off work to prepare. My mother critiqued the way I carved the turkey. Last year, I cooked for 22 people despite having the flu. I ran a fever of 102 degrees while making 5 different side dishes to accommodate various dietary restrictions. When the meal was finally served, my mother took her first bite of turkey, frowned, and announced to the table, "It is a bit dry this year, is not it?" No one defended me. No one noticed I had been cooking for 18 straight hours while sick. My father just passed the gravy and said, "Use more of this, problem solved." That night, after everyone left, and I was still washing dishes alone at midnight, I promised myself things would be different next year. I would set boundaries. I would ask for help. I would stand up for myself. But old patterns die hard, especially in families that benefit from maintaining them. 1 week before this Thanksgiving, Mom called while I was at work. I stepped out of a client meeting to answer, expecting the usual holiday interrogation about my grocery shopping plans. "Stefan, honey, about Thanksgiving," she began, using the sweet tone that always preceded a demand. "Dad and I were thinking it would be nice to keep it small this year. Just immediate family. You, me, Dad, Amanda, and Trevor. If they can fly in, and Jason said he might bring a new girl he is seeing." I felt a rush of relief. A small Thanksgiving sounded manageable, almost pleasant. 7 people max. I could handle that. "That sounds great, Mom," I said, actually meaning it, "but I will need some help this year. I cannot do everything myself again." "Of course, honey," she agreed too quickly. "We all appreciate how much you do. I will have Dad pick up the turkey. How does that sound?" It sounded like the bare minimum, but it was something. I cautiously agreed and returned to my meeting with a lighter heart, allowing myself to imagine a holiday that might actually be enjoyable. 3 days before Thanksgiving, that fragile hope shattered. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some cake pans I would need for baking. Dad was in his recliner watching football, a beer in one hand and his phone in the other. "Hey, sport," he said without looking up. "Did Mom tell you we invited the Hendersons, and Aunt Susan wanted to bring her new boyfriend and his daughter? Oh, and I told my golf buddies they could stop by for dessert. They are all alone for the holiday." I froze in the doorway. What Mom said, it would be small this year. Just family. Dad finally glanced up, his expression puzzled. "It is family. And a few friends. No big deal. You always make plenty anyway." "How many people are we talking about?" I asked, my voice tight. He shrugged. 25 maybe. "Oh wait, the Petersons confirmed yesterday, so that is another 4. So 29. 29 people. After I had specifically asked for a small gathering, after Mom had promised it would just be immediate family, after years of being taken advantage of. "Dad, I cannot cook for 29 people by myself. I told Mom I would need help this year." "And I am helping," he said, holding up his phone. "I am coordinating who brings what chairs. We will need to borrow some extra seating." "That is not what I meant," I said, feeling the anger rise. "I meant help with the actual cooking, the shopping, the preparations. I work full-time, Dad. I cannot take 3 days off to cook for a small army." He sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. That is what family is for Stefan. We all pitch in where we can. Your mother is busy with the hospital fundraiser this week. I am handling the seating arrangements. You do the cooking because you are good at it. I never asked to be the family chef, I said, my voice rising. That role was assigned to me when I was a kid, and no one ever checked if it was what I wanted. Dad's expression hardened. Well, we do not always get what we want. Your mother and I worked hard to give you kids everything. The least you could do is cook a few meals to show your gratitude. A few meals. As if 29 Thanksgiving dinners appeared by magic. As if I had not been cooking for this family since I was 12 years old. Mom walked in, then catching the tension in the air. What is going on? She asked, looking between us. Stefan is having some attitude about Thanksgiving, Dad said dismissively. It is not attitude, I protested. It is the fact that you promised a small family dinner and now suddenly I am cooking for 29 people, by myself. Again. Mom's face did that thing where she manages to look both hurt and manipulative at the same time. After all we have done for you, Stefan. We let you live in the apartment for practically nothing. We helped you get your job at Wilson and Associates. Tom Wilson was my professor in college, I interrupted. He offered me the job because of my portfolio, not because you knew his wife from your book club. The point is, she continued, as if I had not spoken, family helps family. And right now we need you to help with Thanksgiving. I do not see why this is such a big deal. You do it every year. That is the problem, I said quietly. I do it every year. And every year it gets bigger and more demanding, and no one seems to notice or care how much work it is. Dad stood up, towering over me, just like he had when I was a kid. Enough. Thanksgiving is in 3 days. The guests have been invited. Your mother and I have commitments. You will do what needs to be done like you always do. I walked out without another word, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting back tears of frustration. Nothing had changed. Nothing would ever change, as long as I kept playing my assigned role. The night before Thanksgiving, I reluctantly went to my parents' house to start preparations. I had spent the past 2 days in a fog of resentment, mechanically buying groceries, mentally calculating cooking times, and trying to figure out how I would manage everything alone. Dad was waiting for me in the kitchen, a sheet of paper in his hand. Here is the final guest list. 29 people total. Susan's boyfriend is gluten-free. The Hendersons' youngest is now vegan, and Mrs. Peterson needs low-sodium options because of her blood pressure. He handed me the list along with a stack of grocery receipts. I picked up most of what you will need. Start cooking at 6 a.m. and make sure everything is perfect this time. Last year's turkey was on the dry side. The casual reminder of last year's criticism made something crack inside me. I had the flu last year, Dad. I was running a fever while cooking for everyone. He waved a dismissive hand. Well, you are not sick this year, so no excuses. Mom has already told everyone about your special cornbread stuffing. Mom bustled in, then dropping a bag of sweet potatoes on the counter. Oh good, you are here. I forgot to mention that the Wilsons are bringing their exchange student from Japan. I am not sure what those people eat, but maybe make something Asian just to be safe. Those people, I repeated incredulously. And what exactly would something Asian be for Thanksgiving dinner? She looked flustered. I do not know, Stefan. Just figure it out. You are the cook in this family. I never asked to be the cook, I said for what felt like the 1,000th time. Well, someone had to do it, she snapped. When you were younger, you seemed to enjoy it. I was a child, seeking approval, I replied. Of course I seemed to enjoy it. It was the only time either of you paid attention to me. Dad checked his watch. We need to go. We promised to meet the Hendersons for drinks to discuss their kitchen renovation. You are going out? I asked in disbelief. The night before you have 29 people coming for Thanksgiving dinner that I am supposed to cook alone. We will not be late, Mom said, grabbing her purse. Everything is here. Just make sure the turkey goes in first thing tomorrow morning. And please make sure everything is perfect this time. As they headed for the door, Dad turned back. Oh, And we told everyone dinner would be at 2, not 3 like last year. Some people complained it was too late. They left without another word, without offering to help, without acknowledging the magnitude of what they were asking. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by bags of groceries, feeling something final and irrevocable shift inside me. Of course, I said to the empty room, everything will be perfect this time. But as I drove back to my apartment that night, I knew I would not be standing in that kitchen at 6 a.m. I would not be basting a turkey, or chopping vegetables, or making 7 different side dishes to accommodate everyone's dietary needs. For once in my life, I was going to choose myself. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversations with my parents, hearing again the casual dismissal in their voices when I tried to express my feelings. 20-plus years of similar moments cascaded through my mind, all the times my needs had been secondary, all the times my contributions had been expected rather than appreciated. At 1 a.m., I was still awake, alternating between fury and guilt. At 1:30, I found myself opening my laptop and navigating to an airline website. I had no concrete plan, just a desperate need to be somewhere anywhere else when 29 expectant guests arrived for the Thanksgiving feast I was supposed to single-handedly create. The prices for last-minute flights were astronomical, as expected on Thanksgiving Eve. I almost closed the browser, telling myself this was a childish fantasy. But then I remembered my mother's words, make sure everything is perfect this time, and kept scrolling. San Diego. 1 seat left on a 6 a.m. flight. The cost made me wince, but I had savings. For once I would spend money on my own well-being instead of ingredients for a meal no one would fully appreciate. My finger hovered over the purchase button as doubts flooded in. Where would I stay? What would I tell my parents? Was I really going to abandon 29 people on Thanksgiving? Then I remembered Michael, my college roommate, who had moved to San Diego 3 years ago. We still kept in touch through occasional texts and social media. He had invited me to visit multiple times, but I always declined, citing family obligations. I picked up my phone, calculating that it was only 10 p.m. in California. Still, I hesitated before calling. What kind of person asks to crash on someone's couch on Thanksgiving, with only a few hours' notice? Michael answered on the third ring. Stefan, everything okay, man? Kind of late for you to be calling. Hey, Michael, I said, my voice shaky. Sorry about the time. I have a weird question. Are you doing anything for Thanksgiving? Just heading to my cousin's place. Nothing fancy. Why? I took a deep breath. What would you say if I told you I might be in San Diego tomorrow? There was a pause. I would say it is about damn time. My couch has been waiting for you for 3 years. It is last minute, I warned, and I would be arriving early tomorrow morning. Dude, is this about your family's Thanksgiving thing? The one you always complain about but do anyway? Yes, I admitted. They are expecting me to cook for 29 people. Alone. Again. Michael let out a low whistle. 29. That is insane. And let me guess, they dropped it on you last minute. Pretty much. They promised it would be small this year, just immediate family. Then 3 days ago, surprise, 29 people and multiple dietary restrictions. Buy the ticket, Michael said without hesitation. I will pick you up at the airport, and before you ask, yes, I am sure, and no, you are not imposing. My cousin always makes enough food for an army anyway. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I mean it. That is what real friends are for, he replied. Not for exploiting, but for supporting when you need to make a hard choice. After hanging up, I booked the flight, my hand trembling as I entered my credit card information. Then I sat on the edge of my bed, adrenaline, making it impossible to sleep. What I was about to do felt both terrifying and necessary, like jumping from a burning building. At 2:30 a.m., I packed a small bag with essentials. Just enough clothes for a few days, my laptop, phone charger, and toiletries. I moved quietly despite living alone, as if someone might hear me and stop this plan in motion. At 3 a.m., I sat down to write a note. I went through 5 drafts, alternating between lengthy explanations and terse statements. In the end, I kept it simple. I have reached my breaking point. For years I have cooked every holiday meal without help or appreciation. I cannot and will not do it anymore. I am taking some time away. Do not try to contact me. I will reach out when I am ready. Stefan. I placed the note on the kitchen counter of my parents' house when I stopped by to return the house key. The darkened windows showed they were still asleep, unaware that their reliable son, their personal chef, had finally had enough. The Uber driver who picked me up at 4 a.m. was surprisingly chatty for the hour. "Early flight?" he asked, glancing at my small bag. "Yes," I replied, not elaborating. "Heading home for Thanksgiving." I looked out at the dark streets of the town I had never managed to leave. "No," I said quietly. "I am heading away from it." At the airport, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Where are you? Mom went to check on you, and you are not in your apartment. The turkey needs to go in now, if it is going to be ready by 2. I turned off my phone without responding. Going through security, I felt like a fugitive, half expecting to hear my name called over the PA system, ordering me to return to my familial obligations. Sitting at the gate, I experienced waves of conflicting emotions. One moment, panic gripped me. What kind of selfish person abandons their family on Thanksgiving? The next moment, a profound sense of relief washed over me. For once I was choosing my own needs over everyone else's expectations. As boarding began, my hands shook. This was really happening. I was walking away from the role I had played my entire life. The dutiful son, the reliable one, the family chef who never said no. On the plane, I took my window seat and watched the sun begin to rise as we prepared for takeoff. 29 people would arrive at my parents' house in about 9 hours expecting a feast. They would find an empty kitchen instead. The thought made me simultaneously nauseous and liberated. As the plane accelerated down the runway, I closed my eyes. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next, at least it would be different from the pattern of the past 20 years. And different was exactly what I needed. The full extent of what happened after my departure came to me in pieces over the following days, assembled from voicemails, texts, and later conversations. Like a disaster movie told from multiple perspectives, each family member had their own version of events, colored by their particular grievances and viewpoints. According to Amanda, who called me 3 days later when I finally turned my phone back on, chaos erupted around noon, when my parents realized I was truly gone. "Mom went to your apartment early, like around 10, she explained. "When you were not there, she figured you had already gone to their house to start cooking. Then, when she got home and found your note instead of you prepping the turkey, she completely lost it." Dad apparently went through stages of emotion that would make a grief counselor nod in recognition. First, denial. He is probably just at the store getting last-minute ingredients. Then, anger, a string of voicemails I later found on my phone, each more furious than the last. Then a brief period of bargaining texts, offering to help with whatever you need if I would just come home and start the turkey. Finally, a grim acceptance that morphed into practical problem-solving when guests began arriving at 1 p.m. to find no meal in progress. Mom, by contrast, skipped straight to emotional meltdown. According to Jason, who had flown in that morning, expecting the usual Thanksgiving spread, she alternated between sobbing in the bathroom and making frantic calls to local restaurants, trying to secure last-minute reservations for 29 people on Thanksgiving Day. "It was like watching someone's entire identity collapse," Jason told me later. She kept saying, "But Stefan always cooks Thanksgiving. That is what he does. That is who he is." As if you were not allowed to be anything else. The first guests to arrive were Aunt Susan and her new boyfriend Kenneth, along with his college-aged daughter Brittany. Susan, true to form, immediately began with passive-aggressive comments. "These millennials today," she reportedly said loud enough for everyone to hear. "No sense of family obligation. In my day, we did not just run off when things got a little difficult." This from a woman who had never cooked anything more complicated than microwave popcorn, according to Amanda. The surprising defender in this scenario was Uncle Frank, Dad's older brother, who apparently shut Susan down with uncharacteristic firmness. Maybe if any of you had bothered to help the kid, instead of treating him like your personal chef for the past decade, he would not have felt the need to escape, he told the gathered family members. I always thought it was strange that Stefan did all the cooking, while everyone else just showed up to eat. By 1:30 p.m., with more guests arriving by the minute and no meal in sight, emergency measures were enacted. Amanda and Jason were dispatched to every grocery store and takeout place, still open, returning with an assortment of pre-cooked options, rotisserie chickens, deli platters, pre-made side dishes in plastic containers, and bakery pies that still bore price stickers. Dad, meanwhile, had moved from anger to embarrassment as he explained the situation to arriving guests. Stefan had some sort of breakdown, he told people, as if my actions were completely unprovoked and irrational. We are making alternative arrangements. Mom emerged from her crying jag to perform a masterclass in martyrdom. I just do not understand, she tearfully told anyone who would listen. We gave him everything. We supported him. And he abandons us on Thanksgiving, without any warning. The hastily assembled meal was served 2 hours late. According to multiple accounts, it was a strange and awkward affair. The dining room table my mother had meticulously set the night before, with the good china, and her grandmother's silver, now held a mismatched assortment of store-bought foods. Some guests tried to lighten the mood with jokes about the year without Stefan's cooking, while others sat in uncomfortable silence, picking at dry rotisserie chicken and wondering what family drama they had unwittingly walked into. The reactions among family members were divided. The older generation, my parents, aunts, and uncles, largely viewed my absence as a betrayal, an inexplicable dereliction of duty. The younger cousins and siblings, however, seemed to understand on some level. My cousin Taylor, who had always been more perceptive than most of the family, apparently raised her glass in a toast to Stefan. Wherever he is right now, may he be enjoying a meal someone else cooked for him for once. My father reportedly left the room at that point. By evening, when the last guests had departed with their leftover containers of store-bought pie, the family narrative had already begun to solidify. I was selfish. I was ungrateful. I had ruined Thanksgiving. No one mentioned the years of uncompensated labor, the lack of appreciation, the impossible expectations. No one, that is, except Amanda and Jason, who found themselves thrust into the role of cleanup crew, a task that had always fallen to me in previous years. As they washed dishes and took out trash bags full of plastic containers and paper plates, they had their first real conversation about the family dynamics neither of them had previously questioned. Have we always just let Stefan do everything? Amanda asked Jason as they worked. I guess so, he admitted. It was just always the way things were. Mom and Dad worked. Stefan took care of us and did the cooking. I never really thought about it. That is messed up, Amanda said after a moment of reflection. He was just a kid too. That night, while I was 3,000 miles away on Michael's couch in San Diego, my siblings sat in our childhood home and began to reassess 2 decades of family patterns they had accepted without question. It was the first fracture in the foundation of our family structure, the first recognition that perhaps what had seemed normal was anything but. The California sunshine hit differently than the weak November light of my New England hometown. As I stepped out of the San Diego airport, the warmth enveloped me like a physical welcome, a confirmation that I had made the right choice. Michael was waiting in the pickup area, leaning against his faded blue Jeep, looking exactly as he had in college, just with shorter hair and better clothes. When he saw me, his face broke into a wide grin. "The fugitive arrives," he called out, pulling me into a bear hug. "Welcome to freedom, man." The simple greeting nearly undid me. After years of interactions defined by what I could provide, rather than who I was, the unconditional welcome hit me hard. I blinked back unexpected tears as I tossed my bag into the back of his Jeep. "Thanks for this," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "I know it was last minute." Michael waved away my gratitude as he pulled into traffic. Dude, I have been telling you to visit for years. It took a family meltdown, but hey, whatever works. Have you eaten? Want to grab breakfast? We stopped at a beachside cafe where I had my first meal in years that I neither cooked nor had to clean up after. Simple scrambled eggs with toast, but someone else made it for me. Someone else would wash the plate. The small luxury of this nearly brought me to tears again. So, Michael said as we finished eating, "Want to talk about it?" Over the next hour, I poured out the whole story, not just Thanksgiving, but the years of built-up resentment, the pattern of exploitation, the gradual erosion of my identity, until I became nothing more than the family chef. Michael listened without interruption, occasionally nodding. When I finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a moment before responding. "You know what strikes me," he finally said. "All those years we lived together in college and I never knew any of this. You always just said your family needed your help with holiday meals. You never mentioned you were essentially running a free catering service." "It sounds ridiculous when you put it that way," I admitted. "Not ridiculous," he corrected. "Abusive. They parentified you as a kid and never stopped." The word abusive made me flinch. That seems extreme. They did not beat me or anything. "Exploitation does not have to leave bruises to be harmful," Michael said. "Look, I am not saying they are monsters, but they treated you like an employee, not a son, and not even a paid employee, an indentured servant." We arrived at his apartment, a modest but bright one-bedroom, with a balcony overlooking a courtyard filled with palm trees. As promised, the couch was made up with sheets and a pillow. On the coffee table sat a welcome basket with snacks, a water bottle, and a small bottle of champagne, with a note, "To freedom." "My cousin's Thanksgiving thing is not until 4, Michael explained, so you can nap if you want, or we could walk down to the beach, whatever you need." What I needed, I realized, was exactly this space to decide for myself what I wanted to do next. No obligations, no expectations. Just choice. We ended up at the beach where I sat on the sand watching surfers while Michael told me about his life in California. He worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm, had recently started dating a veterinarian named Paulo, and spent his weekends either surfing or hiking. His life sounded simple and self-determined in ways mine had never been. "What about you?" he asked. "Besides being the unwilling family chef, what has been going on in your life?" I opened my mouth to respond and realized I had no answer. Outside of work and family obligations, I had no life to speak of. No hobbies I had maintained. No dating life. No real friends besides Michael, who lived 3,000 miles away. "I think I forgot who I am," I said quietly. "When I am not cooking for everyone else, I do not know what I like to do anymore." Michael nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Then maybe that is what this trip needs to be about. Rediscovering Stefan." Thanksgiving dinner at Michael's cousin's apartment was nothing like the formal affairs my family staged. 10 people crowded around a table meant for 6, eating from mismatched plates. The food was potluck style, some homemade, some store-bought, all served with easy laughter and zero criticism. When I tried to help in the kitchen, Michael's cousin Diego physically blocked my path. "Absolutely not," he declared. "Michael told me your story. You are banned from cooking duties. Your only job is to eat and enjoy." As we sat down to eat, Diego suggested everyone share something they were thankful for. When my turn came, I found myself unexpectedly emotional. "I am thankful for the reminder that family can be supportive without being demanding," I said, "and for friends who make space for you when you need it most." Around the table, people nodded in understanding. One by one, they began sharing their own stories of family boundaries they had established, cutting contact with toxic parents, limiting holiday visits, standing up to unreasonable expectations. I was not alone in my struggle, I realized. Many people had walked this path before me. For the first time in my adult life, I experienced a holiday meal where I tasted every bite, where I participated in conversation, instead of jumping up to check on the next course, where I was fully present rather than mentally calculating. Serving sizes and cooking times. The next day, Black Friday, while millions of Americans fought through crowded stores, Michael and I spent the morning on a nearly empty beach. My phone remained off. The distance from my usual life allowed me to see it with painful clarity. How small my existence had become, how narrow my identity. "What do you actually want?" Stefan Michael asked, as we watched waves crash against the shore. "Not what your parents want from you. Not what you think you should want. What do you want?" "I want." I began, then stopped, startled by how unfamiliar it felt to prioritize my own desires. I want to not be taken for granted. I want to cook when I choose to, not when I am expected to. I want to live somewhere that is mine, not an extension of my parents' property. I want to have experiences that have nothing to do with being the reliable son. "That is a start," Michael nodded. "But those are all reactions to what you do not want. What do you affirmatively want to move toward?" The question haunted me throughout the day. What did I want my life to look like if I were truly free to choose? By evening, my phone had accumulated dozens of missed calls and messages. With Michael's encouragement, I finally turned it on, skimming through the texts and voicemails. They followed a predictable pattern: Dad's angry demands to know where I was, Mom's tearful guilt trips, extended family members expressing disappointment or concern. But there were other messages too. Amanda asking if I was okay, saying she understood why I left. Jason awkwardly acknowledging he had never realized how much I did for the family. Even my cousin Taylor had texted epic exit, "Call if you need anything." Not all the reactions were negative. Some people actually saw my side. The most unexpected message came from Uncle Frank, my father's brother. "Your dad is furious, but between us I think what you did took guts. They have been taking advantage of you for years. Take the time you need. Happy to talk when you are ready." I showed Michael the range of responses, surprised by the support mixed in with the expected guilt trips. "See," he said, "not everyone thinks you are the villain in this story." On Saturday, Michael introduced me to his neighbor Elisa, a kindergarten teacher with an easy laugh, who had moved to San Diego from Boston 2 years earlier. Another East Coast refugee, she called herself when we met. I escaped a family that thought my sole purpose was providing free childcare for all their kids. Over coffee, Elisa and I compared notes on setting boundaries with demanding families. She had gone through exactly what I was experiencing. Now, the guilt, the recriminations, the slow realization that saying no did not make her a bad person. "The hardest part is accepting that you cannot change them," she told me. "You can only change how you respond to them, and that means letting them be upset sometimes." "How did your family react when you moved across the country?" I asked. "Like I had betrayed them," she said with a wry smile. "My mother did not speak to me for 3 months, but eventually they adjusted. Now when I visit, we have a much healthier relationship because they know I have limits." As the weekend progressed, I made a decision to extend my stay. Michael assured me his couch was mine for as long as I needed it. I emailed my boss requesting a week of emergency personal leave, which he granted without question. And I began to consider for the first time what a life centered around my own needs might look like. The contrast between my family's version of love, conditional, demanding, exploitative, and the support I received from Michael and his friends could not have been starker. Here were people who offered help without expecting anything in return, who respected boundaries, who treated giving as a choice rather than an obligation. This, I realized, was what healthy relationships looked like. Not perfect, not without conflict, but fundamentally balanced and respectful. The insight was simultaneously liberating and heartbreaking, illuminating both what I had been missing and what I could move toward. By the time I booked my return flight a week later, I had made some decisions. My parents would not like them. Parts of my family would probably call me selfish. But for the first time in my life, I was choosing a path based on what I needed, rather than what everyone else expected. The return flight felt like traveling backward in time, each mile bringing me closer to patterns and expectations I had temporarily escaped. Yet I was not the same person who had fled a week earlier. California had given me perspective, and perspective had given me strength. I had texted my parents the day before returning. I am coming home tomorrow. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Coffee at 2 p.m., just the three of us. Their responses were predictably different. Dad, you have a lot of explaining to do. Mom, we have been so worried, Stefan. We just want to understand what went wrong. What went wrong? As if my departure had been a sudden mechanical failure rather than the inevitable result of years of pressure building. Riverside Coffee was neutral territory, a place where none of us would have home field advantage. I arrived early, claiming a corner table and ordering a latte that I did not really want just to have something to do with my hands. They arrived exactly on time, Mom looking teary-eyed, and Dad wearing the stern expression he reserved for serious family discussions. They spotted me and made their way over, Mom reaching for a hug that I stiffly accepted. You look different, she said, studying my face. I had gotten a haircut in San Diego shorter than I usually wore it. I am different, I replied. Dad did not bother with pleasantries. Do you have any idea what you put us through? He demanded. As soon as they sat down, 29 people showed up for Thanksgiving dinner and found an empty kitchen. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I met his gaze steadily. Do you know how exploitative it was to expect me to cook for 29 people alone, after promising it would be a small family dinner this year? We did not, Mom began, but I cut her off. Yes, you did. You promised it would be just immediate family. Then 3 days before, suddenly, it was 29 people with special dietary needs, and I was supposed to handle it all without complaint like always. You could have talked to us instead of running away, Dad said. I did talk to you, I replied, my voice level. I specifically told both of you that I needed help this year, that I could not do everything myself again. You ignored me. You dismissed my feelings like you always do. Mom's eyes welled with tears. We never meant to make you feel unappreciated, Stefan. We just thought you enjoyed cooking for the family. When I was 15, maybe I did, because it was the only way to get your attention. But I am 32 now, and I have been trying to tell you for years that this arrangement is not working for me. So you decided to humiliate us in front of our friends and family. Dad asked, anger edging his words. That was your solution. My solution was to finally put myself first after a lifetime of putting everyone else first. I reached my breaking point. Your breaking point, he repeated skeptically. Seems convenient that your breaking point happened right when we needed you most. I leaned forward, looking directly into his eyes. It happened right when you pushed me past my clearly stated boundaries. Again, it happened after years of taking me for granted, after years of criticism instead of gratitude, after years of being treated like the family servant instead of your son. The raw honesty in my voice must have penetrated because Dad's expression faltered. For perhaps the first time, he was actually listening to me. What exactly do you want from us? Stefan, Mom asked, dabbing at her eyes. I want to be treated with respect, I said simply. I want my boundaries to be acknowledged. I want to be asked, not told, if I am willing to cook for family gatherings. And if I say no, I want that to be accepted without guilt trips or manipulation. And if we cannot give you that, Dad asked quietly, then we will not have much of a relationship moving forward. I replied the words, painful but necessary. I would rather have no family than continue to be exploited by one. Mom gasped. You would cut us off over Thanksgiving dinner. This is not about one Thanksgiving dinner, I explained patiently. This is about a pattern that has defined our relationship since I was 12 years old. I am not your personal chef. I am not the designated family caretaker. I am your adult son who deserves the same respect you give to everyone else in your life. The conversation continued for 2 hours, covering ground we should have addressed years ago. There were tears, not just from Mom, but from me as well. There was anger, mostly from Dad, though it gradually gave way to a grudging recognition. I never thought of it that way, he finally admitted when I described how it felt to be cooking with the flu last year while everyone criticized the food. I guess we did take you for granted. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from him, and I accepted it as such. Before we parted, I laid out my terms clearly. I am moving out of the garage apartment next month. I have already started looking for my own place. Sunday dinners will no longer be a weekly obligation. I will come when I choose to, not because it is expected. And if I do cook for family gatherings in the future, it will be as a choice with help from others, not as a requirement. Mom looked distressed. But where will you go for Christmas? I have not decided yet, I said truthfully. But wherever I go, it will be because I want to be there, not because I am following a script written decades ago. Dad nodded slowly, a new respect in his eyes that I had never seen before. You have changed, he observed. I have started to, I corrected. This is just the beginning. We parted with tentative plans to meet again, in 2 weeks. Nothing was fully resolved, but the foundation had been laid for a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect, rather than expectation and obligation. In the following days, I had similar conversations with my siblings. Amanda called first, wanting to meet for coffee. When we sat down together, she surprised me with an immediate apology. I never realized how much we all depended on you, she said. Not until you were gone and suddenly everything fell apart. I am sorry, Stefan. I should have seen it sooner. Jason was more awkward, suggesting we grab a beer after work one day. So he began uncomfortably. I guess we have all been kind of taking advantage of you, huh? Kind of, I agreed. I never really thought about it, he admitted. You were always the responsible one, you know. I just figured that was your thing. It was my assigned role, I corrected him. Not my choice. He nodded slowly. I get that now. So, what happens going forward, with holidays and stuff? We figure it out together, I told him. All of us. Not just me. The conversations were difficult but necessary, laying bare years of unexamined family dynamics. Not everything was resolved in those initial talks. Old patterns do not disappear overnight. But acknowledging the problem was the essential first step toward healthier relationships. A month later, I moved into my own apartment, not above my parents' garage, not within walking distance of their house, but across town in a neighborhood I had always liked but never considered living in. It was small but entirely mine, a space where no one could make demands or have expectations. The first night in my new place, I cooked a simple meal for myself, pasta, with a sauce I had been wanting to try. I set the table properly with a placemat and cloth napkin. I lit a candle, and as I sat down to eat, I realized I was cooking for pleasure again for the first time in years. Without obligation or expectation, the joy had returned to something I once loved. That night, I sent Michael a photo of my dinner, with the caption, "Cooking for an audience of one. Best meal I have had in years." He replied, "The most important guest at your table should always be you." 1 year later, as another November rolled around, the changes in my life were both subtle and profound. Outwardly, things might have looked similar. I still lived in the same town, worked at the same architecture firm, saw my family regularly. But the invisible power dynamics had shifted fundamentally. In the months following my Thanksgiving escape, I had committed to weekly therapy sessions, gradually unpacking the complex family patterns that had shaped my identity. My therapist helped me recognize how thoroughly I had internalized the caretaker role, how much of my self-worth had been tied to serving others rather than honoring my own needs. It is not selfish to have boundaries, she reminded me during one session. It is necessary for healthy relationships. Applying that wisdom to my family relationships was an ongoing process of trial and error. There were setbacks, times when I slipped into old patterns, times when my parents forgot our new arrangement. But with each small victory, each respected boundary, we built something stronger than what had existed before. The most visible change came in how we approached gatherings. The Sunday dinner tradition had been replaced by a monthly potluck where everyone contributed. Sometimes I cooked the main dish, sometimes I brought wine and nothing else. The key difference was choice I participated when and how I wanted to, not because it was expected. My relationship with Michael remained strong despite the distance. We texted almost daily, and he had visited me twice since my California escape. Through him, I had also maintained contact with Elisa, his neighbor. What started as supportive texts evolved into long phone calls, then video chats that sometimes lasted for hours. By summer, I had flown back to San Diego 3 times to see her, and we were cautiously exploring a long-distance relationship. "You are completely different with her," Michael observed during one of my visits. "More relaxed, more yourself." "Because she knows and accepts the real me," I explained, "not the role I was assigned." As Thanksgiving approached again, my mother tentatively asked about my plans during one of our now regular coffee dates. "We thought we might do something different this year," she said, watching my reaction carefully. "A restaurant maybe. Just immediate family. If you wanted to join us." The fact that she phrased it as an invitation rather than an expectation showed how far we had come. "I appreciate the offer," I said honestly, "but I have actually decided to host Thanksgiving this year, at my place. A small gathering, just a few people I really want to spend the day with." Her disappointment was visible but restrained. "Oh, I see. Well, that sounds nice." "You and Dad are invited," I added, "if you want to come, but there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" she asked, wariness in her voice. "Everyone brings something. Everyone helps with cleanup. And there will be no comments about the food being not perfect or different from how we usually do it. It is about being together, not about meeting some arbitrary standard." She nodded slowly. "I think we can manage that." On Thanksgiving Day, my apartment welcomed 8 guests: my parents Amanda and Trevor Jason, my friend and colleague Alyssa, and Michael and Elisa, who had flown in specially for the occasion. The meal was collaborative in a way family gatherings had never been before. My father, to everyone's surprise, had researched and prepared an elaborate appetizer platter. Mom brought her famous apple pie, which she actually had made herself for years, despite having me cook everything else. Michael and Elisa contributed California wines. Jason handled the music playlist. Amanda and Trevor brought side dishes. I cooked the turkey, but only the turkey, a manageable task that left me time to actually enjoy my guests. The conversation flowed easily, free of the tension that had characterized family gatherings in the past. At one point, I caught my father watching me with an expression I could not quite decipher. "What?" I asked when our eyes met. "I was just thinking," he said, "that I have never seen you look so relaxed during a holiday meal." "That is because I am actually participating in it this year," I replied, "not just serving it." He nodded thoughtfully. "I prefer this version of you, and I am sorry it took us so long to see it." Coming from my father, it was as close to a full apology as I was likely to get, and I accepted it with a nod. After dessert, as everyone lingered around the table with coffee and digestives, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. From the desperate escape on that early morning flight to this moment of genuine connection, it had been a path of both loss and discovery. I had lost the false security of familiar patterns, the comfort of clearly defined, if restrictive, roles. But I had gained something far more valuable: authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation, a sense of self defined by my own choices rather than others' expectations, and the profound knowledge that love does not require martyrdom. "I have a question for everyone," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "What is one boundary you have set this year that improved your life?" As each person shared their story, from Amanda establishing work-life balance to my father surprisingly admitting he had started saying no to committee requests, I realized that my small act of rebellion had created ripples beyond my own life. By claiming my worth, I had somehow given others permission to do the same. Later, as I said goodbye to each guest, my mother hugged me tighter than usual. "I never understood before," she whispered, "that by letting you go, I would actually get to know you better." That night, after everyone had left and the kitchen was clean, thanks to collective effort, Elisa and I sat on my small balcony watching the stars appear in the autumn sky. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Getting on that plane last year?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret that it came to that point," I finally said. "I regret the years I spent being resentful instead of honest. But no, I do not regret the decision itself. It was the first time I chose myself, and everything good in my life now stems from that choice." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Sometimes the bravest thing is walking away from what no longer serves you." And sometimes, I added, walking away is what makes it possible to come back on better terms. As the year ended and a new one began, I carried that wisdom with me, that sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself and for others is to break harmful patterns, even when it hurts. That boundaries are not walls but bridges to more authentic connections. That your worth is inherent, not earned through endless giving. I still cook for people I care about. I still enjoy creating meals that bring pleasure to others. But now, I do it from choice rather than obligation, from love rather than fear, from abundance rather than depletion. And that has made all the difference. Have you ever had to walk away from a situation to save your own well-being? If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time you had to set boundaries with family. Your experience might help someone else find the courage to make a necessary change. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. And remember, choosing yourself is not selfish, it is essential. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to hear more stories about finding freedom through difficult choices. Until next time, take care of yourselves.